r/ask Reddit. What is the strangest thing you've seen that you cannot explain? When I worked in the medical field, I had a dream one night about a patient of mine, a very kind elderly woman, whom I visited once or twice a week. In the dream she came to me, dancing, and called out to me that she wasn't hurting anymore. I was so happy watching her dance after seeing her decline for years. When I got to work the next morning, I told my co-workers about the dream, and later that morning we got the call from her daughter that she had passed away the night before. I cannot explain that, but I am glad I had told my co-workers about it before the call and not after, otherwise they'd never have believed me. It's such a bizarre experience, but so wonderful to feel she was at peace. This is awfully sad but also really sweet. I once met this young homeless guy, probably about 10 years ago, acted like he knew me. When I said I had no idea who he was, he said, "Isn't your name Bobnob and you work in radio broadcasting?" I got right freaked out cause I had been applying to colleges for radio and there was no reason for him to know my name. I said no, but I've wanted to work in radio. Who are you? He responded saying it wasn't important and to ignore him as sometimes he gets confused between the present and the future, and just left. I never saw him again. It threw me off completely. I abandoned the idea to go into radio almost out of fear. So, you didn't end up in radio, which means you altered the future, which means we are all living in an altered timeline, which means 2020 is your fault. Thanks Dong. I mean, I'm still alive and radio still exists, so it could still happen. Not taking the fall for this just yet. I was having a sleepover at home with a friend from school. We were watching a film and suddenly the weirdest thought comes to me. Her dog has just passed. Obviously I cannot just blurt that out, so I weirdly ask in the middle of the film, "Hey, by the way, how was your dog?" She was quite surprised obviously. I had never met her dog and she doesn't talk much about it. She just mentioned she had one. She answered that he is aging but well. We moved on, but I couldn't shake a weird feeling. Anyway, she goes home the next day and calls me after a while. She asked, "Why did you ask about my dog yesterday? How did you know? He passed away last night, around the same time you asked about him." I was both shocked and unsurprised at the same time. I don't have an explanation. It seems like a weird coincidence since her dog was not something usually on my mind. It never happened to me again. This happens to me every time someone close to me dies, but I dream it. I can't explain it. Cats I had growing up, my grandparents, etc. I wake up knowing they've passed and unsurprised when someone tells me. This is exclusive to me being asleep when they die. If I'm awake I just feel it in my gut. I also always dream about people I know who have passed. They're always vivid dreams like they're still alive and we're just hanging out and talking. What's weird is I almost never dream about people who are living. So when they show up in those types of dreams I just know they're dead. Woman shrugging. Standing outside of a convenience store, I saw two different cars park about a minute or so apart and go in the store. It was obvious the two didn't know each other, at least it seemed. After shopping, they each left in the other's car. Still can't explain it today without going down the CIA conspiracy route. Very good chance this was a very large nefarious deal. Drugs, guns, money or humans in the trunk. Not sure this counts. I was in it, but wasn't happening to me. Pulled into a fast food drive-thru in Odessa, TX. My first time there. My turn at the speaker, and I place my order. It's been a long drive, so I'm treating myself and being a little picky, asking nicely, and building a customized meal. Cashier listens, and says again, "You ate all that already?" Me. Cashier. "Oh, I'm sorry. Someone who sounds just like you was just through here. Placed the exact same order." Me. "Hey, cool. Weird, but cool." I get to the window and the girl looks at me with this exasperated expression, opens the window and says, "It is you." Me. Question mark? Cashier calls her manager over and points at me, shows him the order, says nothing. Manager. "Welcome back. Was there a problem with your order?" Me. Number. "I haven't gotten it yet." Manager. Clearly confused. "I made your order myself." Cashier points at time on receipt. Manager blinks and says that's the same order. To her. Looks at me. Back at her. And says, "And that's him." cashier. I said the same thing. Both of them looked genuinely upset and confused. It got worse when I told them I had never been in Odessa before. As the manager was handing me my food, he laughed and visibly relaxed. The other guy had long hair, he explained, pointing to my cap, like halfway down his back. You just have a twin, I guess, with the same kind of car. His face when I took off my hat and showed him long hair. They might have been messing with me for fun. Shifts get long and people are creative. But if it was a game, they deserved careers in theater. Because they looked terrified. Yes, I looked around for copies of my car or self while I was in town. Nada. 4 Amish men in a room counting money with a money counter while simultaneously weighing out my ounce of weed. Just wasn't what I was expecting. A very badass Great Dane I knew, a former neighbor's dog, was so afraid of a month-old kitten that he ran into the deepest room of his home and didn't stop quivering and whimpering for several hours. For context, he wasn't a timid dog. Little over a month before the mentioned incident, a drunk man attempted to break into their home at night and the dog bit half of his left foot off. P.S. Rest in peace Scoob. Dogs are duckin' weird but I love them. My technical stepfather bought an idiot cockapoo who wasn't afraid of anything. One day one of my friends shows up and he wouldn't go near her. Just kept barking and backing away. Oh, he is afraid of black people but she's far from black. I was driving one night in a really foul mood and speeding. Like when I say speeding I mean at least 25 over the limit. Anyway, this car gets behind me and for some reason I can just tell it wasn't a cop. It was a full tinted Chevy truck with weird lights on it, like comically large aftermarket front headlights. Once it got behind me I got a really eerie feeling I can't explain, like my body just knew something was wrong. Anyway, I figured if it was a cop they would light me up for speeding, but for some reason they just kept pace with me, also speeding themselves. So at this point I'm getting a little weirded out, so I turn off the freeway and they follow me. I turn into a gas station and get out. I figure if I'm going to get axe murdered at least the cameras will pick it up and give my family some closure. Something just didn't sit right with me. I knew something was up. As I'm getting out of my car the truck rolls its windows down. And what I saw still haunts me to this day. It was a heavily disfigured guy, the only likes of which I can compare to that guy Rocky Dennis from the movie about the guy with a crazy disfigured head who falls for that girl who loves him for him and not the abomination that is his face. And he starts to motion me with his finger like telling me to come closer. I don't care if he was going to give me the winning Powerball numbers, there was no way in hell I was going to approach his car. I bolt inside the gas station. At this point my whole body is shaking. I try and tell the clerk what's going on as they stare at me, probably thinking I'm drunk or high off my ass as my story doesn't make any sense. I go to look outside and the truck is gone. I still have nightmares to this day. He was trying to warn you about the murderer in your backseat. Or he was trying to warn you how going 25 over causes accidents that can horrifically disfigure you or the other driver by dangerously chasing after you in an indignant rage. Squirrel wearing a leaf cape. Went hiking late at night with my buddy when something big and bright flew right over us above the tree line. It was so bright we couldn't even look at it, and whatever it was it didn't make a sound. Actually, it was probably the most quiet moment of my life. I remember saying what the duck, but no sound came out of my mouth. Only lasted a few seconds and it was over. Probably a small meteor. You can look at videos of them online. They fit the description almost perfectly. Edit. Meteor, not meteorite. My grandfather told me a really cool story. There's a couple of things that grow or rot in trees that glow. Google foxfire. He saw an owl completely covered in this stuff flying around at night sometime in the 1930s. When I was in my 20s in the early 1990s I had a car accident that kept me in hospital for about a year. It was a Catholic hospital and most of the nursing staff were nuns, and besides the normal checks they regularly just stopped in to chat and see how I was doing. Early one morning there was a knock and this nun came in that I hadn't seen before and introduced herself as Sister Greta, a member of the nursing staff. She sat on the side of the bed and we spoke for a few minutes, then she asked if she could say a prayer for me. She held my hand and said a prayer, then wished me well and left. About 5 minutes later there was another knock and one of the regular sisters came in to say hi. I remarked it was going to be a good day because I'd already had one visit from Sister Greta and now I was getting another one. She said there wasn't a Sister Greta on the staff and there was only 2 sisters around. It being so early, I pointed to the bed which clearly showed where she had been sitting and described her and the habit she had been wearing, now getting a bit unnerved. The sister basically shrugged and bustled off. She came back about half an hour later with a book about the hospital's history and showed me a picture of some nuns from the 50s. Their habits were exactly the same as Sister Greta's that I described. Turns out that patients regularly mention talking to nuns in old garb that definitely weren't part of the current staff. I never saw her again or anything similar while I was there. Kinda freaky but not overly disturbing. I can't really explain it, but I guess it's the sort of ghost story I'm okay with. If that's what it was. Edit. Okay, heaps of cool questions that I'll reply to, but a couple of common ones. No, I'm not religious by any stretch. I believe in getting a good night's sleep, steak, and the love of a good woman. Or man. Or whatever lights your candle. I made some belief calls in my mid-teens and have stuck to them. No, not once did anyone try and save or convert me. In fact, my father marked the religion question as NA on the admission documents and neither of us were ever questioned on it. If a prayer was ever said, I was asked first if that was okay and, a few times, I did decline. Trust me, when you have been assisted to shit while lying down on your back with your legs in traction and experience the cleanup operation afterwards, it takes some time to want company again. The first few weeks I was on meds, morphine and tramadol being the options on the menu. They bunged me up. See bedpan comments above, and the docs warned me about dependency, so, with the exception of post-surgical relief, it was Panadol, Disprin, and Doxepal. So, if I remember right, the sisters all lived on the top floor of the hospital, so, technically yes, there was someone living in the attic. Could the nuns have been pranking me? Absolutely. Despite perceptions, they are a funny bunch. Enjoy a good laugh. Read comics and watch Star Wars. Only, there was never a "ha, we got you." Yup, it absolutely could have been a hallucination, ignoring the bum imprint on the bed. And yup, it absolutely could have been sleep paralysis. And yup, I absolutely could have actually dreamed it all. But OP asked what strange stuff had happened that I couldn't explain. No, I don't think she was Cthulhu or one of his followers, but I've been wrong about such things before. Outside my bedroom window was a paddock, and one morning I saw a rabbit running across towards the woods behind the paddock. It was a minimum of 5 foot tall. You saw the Easter Bunny, my friend. When me and my best friend were teenagers, we were walking home during the wee hours of the morning when a drunk guy basically acted like we knew him and invited us to eat. For some reason, we actually came with him and we ate at his 24/7 joint, where he told us about his adventures around the world, showed pictures, etc. We hung out until it was around 5 AM and walked home together. I have no idea who he ducking was. I still don't. A long time ago, when I was in preschool, school had just ended and I was the first one, adult or child, at the exit, which was a tall gate with one of those C-shaped latches that slips over a pole to keep the gate shut. I walked up to it and reached for the latch, but alas, I was very small and the latch was at least 3 feet above me. I stepped back and decided to just wait for the adults to come set me free, but then the latch just lifted and the gate opened. I saw it clearly. There was nobody around and no one touched it. Still have no idea what that could have been. Childhood telekinesis? Who knows? I'll preface this by saying I don't really believe in the paranormal or superstitions, although I find these topics super interesting. But something really weird happened one night after leaving a movie theater with a friend that I've never been able to rationalize. We had just watched a horror movie as well, so we were definitely in that spooky mood. During our drive home out of the city I lived in the country, we counted 3 cars pulled over in different areas on the road. As we get onto the highway we count about 8 more, in various locations, all a decent distance apart. So it's not like they're yielding to an ambulance or something like that. We get about halfway to my house and we ended up counting a total of 12 cars before my friend freaks out and begs me to take a back road. He was convinced it was a sign that we may get in a collision or a road accident of some kind. We were silent the rest of the ride home. I've brought it up to him once or twice since then and he gets really defensive and shuts it down immediately. It really bothered him. It's definitely weird and I can't explain it, but it makes for an interesting story. I saw this the other day driving home from work. Turned out a truck or something had lost a box of screws and there were like 20 cars pulled over with flats. I don't know why I read these creepy threads at midnight right before bed. I can't help it. The creepy stories is what introduced me to Reddit. I was half asleep and something grabbed my feet. I jumped up and seen a little girl run out the room. My 2 dogs both looked at the little girl and watched her leave the room and looked at me as if to say, "Did you see that?" Then chased her down the stairs into the living room. I followed behind them. When we got to the living room there was no one there. The only explanation I have is I was still dreaming while awake. I have dreams about people, situations, or just rooms that I've never seen or been. Then usually years later I find myself in the room, or with the person, or in the situation. The memory is only about a second, just enough to go wait. I did this before and I remember it just ahead of real time. Also, I have injured my knees a lot and I noticed the feeling I had the last couple times before. It was an uneasy sorta light feeling the whole day before I was at the place or situation when I got injured. Then I would get hurt again. This happens to me a lot. I dream about very specific places or people that at the time make no sense. When I find myself in those places or with the same people in that exact situation years later, it's like a heavy dose of deja vu. I was taking a trip with my then girlfriend and we had to cross the Hudson River to get to where we were going. There are only a handful of bridges across, and I know them all from having grown up in the area. On that particular trip we were supposed to take the Bear Mountain Bridge, but I got off the wrong exit and passed it. We decided it wasn't a big deal. The next bridge, the Newberry Beacon, was actually closer to where we were going. It would just bring us over a little bit past our destination, but not enough to really matter. So we kept on driving, not really paying specific attention to where we were since it was probably 20-30 minutes until we got there. Well, we never crossed the Newberry Beacon that day. We also never crossed the Bear Mountain. And we certainly didn't drive an extra half an hour to the mid-Hudson or turn around and go back to the tap. When we did take a minute to check where we were and how close the bridge was, we found we were already on the other side of the river. No bridge. We were just already there. So either there's a secret tunnel somewhere under the river, we had our memories erased, or we found some kind of spatial rift somewhere in the Hudson Valley. It wasn't what I saw so much as felt. I was on my way to Petersburg, a small island in Alaska, but the runway was too foggy so I had to stay in Juneau at a hotel for the night. Anyway, the next morning I was sleeping and had my hand dangling in between the bed and the wall, and I swear on everything I felt something grab my hand. It had a grip like a very firm handshake and it literally woke me up out of a dead sleep. I actually got up and checked under the bed and nothing was there. It was very weird. Did you stay up with the light on, rocking and sobbing in the corner the rest of the night? Seems like the only logical thing to do after that. How a friend of mine got his wife. He's a cokey bastard who treats everyone like they are his inferior. His wife is a super cool person, like someone everyone would want to be friends with. The amount of our friends who have asked why is she with him is staggeringly high. Even his sisters. Cannot be explained. Can it be explained why you are friends with him? He's a blast at parties and really knows how to have a good time without drugs or getting the police involved. He's fairly reliable outside of work, but can't be trusted to pay his tab. I went kayaking with my family this one time, and while nearing the end of our route I saw this other family about 50 featuring away, relatively normal looking, except for this one kid. His face looked weirdly deformed, like he had large black eyes, 2 slits for a nose, and a large downward pointing snout with a black hole on the end. I kept looking back at him and rubbing my eyes to see if I was just going crazy or some shit, but he just looked like this creepy ass SCP monster. I didn't dare get closer. I sort of just left and tried to not think about it, but to this day I have no idea what it was to cause that person to look like that in my eyes. I've seen a kid who scared the bejesus out of me. She was albino with red, blind eyes, but that didn't scare me. She was only 8 years old and she was in the women's restroom alone. She asked me a strange question through the door, and when I exited the stall she was just standing there, and she had sharp, pointy teeth. I didn't want to be mean to her, but the startle I felt in my heart as I looked into her sightless eyes forced me to hightail it out of that deserted restroom as fast as a beach could. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.